Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
The other day, I dealt with judgment writing, and during the course of the completion session, I announced that I'll be dealing with the other relevant topic, that is law and precedents. It has got some bearing on the previous topic. While preparing a judgment, a judge has to see certain precedents cited by both sides. Sometimes there is likelihood of his going into a fix or entertaining a predicament or some bewilderment as to how to apply a particular precedent. More especially when there are precedents which are inconsistent with each other and there is some incongruity between them. The portion will be much worse if those precedents cited by the advocates are of equal benches, equal strength benches. Then how to apply those precedents? One will be in a fix. So also, one should be cautious of the fact, as guided by the Supreme Court from time to time, that while applying the precedent, a judge should carefully think of the factual situation of a given case. Precedents cannot be applied blindly. So these are all the issues we should know. Let me straight away take to the discussion, and then we'll be dealing with some case law relevant to that discussion. I'm told by some of my colleagues during the course of a meeting held by me with the faculty members that this topic was already dealt by one of the faculty members. If that is so, it will be much helpful to me. I can have a good interaction with you because your minds are already tuned on it. First of all, what is a precedent? What is your understanding of the word precedent? Because you are already taught the subject, you can come out with your understanding. What do you think of the word precedent? Any one of you may speak out.
Binding judgments, authoritative pronouncements.
So you say that, Durgarani, you say that it's an authoritative pronouncement of a judgment. Any other view expressed by any one of you?
Precedence means authoritative or persuasive, sir?
That is all the discussion with regard to precedent. The kinds of precedents, how to apply precedents, let us see. First and foremost, what do you understand about precedent? Precedent. What do you understand?
Past decision, sir.
It is a past decision.
Past decision.
Follows
Yes, sir.
What is it?
a rule to follow, my lord.
Rule. Dheeraj?
Rule to follow.
A rule to follow. That means a principle settled by the courts that should be followed. That means a proportion of law laid down by the courts. A proportion of law laid down by the courts, which has got some binding force. A precedent means a law already settled or decided. Law already settled or decided which has got some binding force for the subordinate courts. Can such a law be laid down by any court? Suppose a decision passed by a magistrate, a decision passed by a subordinate judge, a decision passed by a district judge, a judgment given by any one of them. Does it operate as a precedent?
No, sir.
By constitutional courts.
How can you distinguish some of our friends saying constitutional courts? So which is the decision that operates as a precedent? Which is the court competent to create such a precedent?
The Honorable Supreme Court.
So one of our friends says Honorable Supreme Court, Chaitanya, or Sheikh Harif. Then
Article 141 and
As per
principle
Article
state the fact
141
it
and
speaks about
142.
it.
so which are the courts that can create a precedent? Whose judgments are considered precedents?
Supreme Court and High Court. Sir.
High Court, sir. Our High Court.
You must have heard of the word court of record. You must have heard of the word court of record. Where it is set?
Article 129. 215.
In the Indian Constitution. In the Indian Constitution, isn't it? So which is the court of record? These two are the courts of record. Which are these two courts?
Supreme Court and High Court. Sir.
High Court. Article 129 and Article 250. Under 129, the Supreme Court is the court of record. Under Article 215, the High Court is the court of record. So their judgments are binding on the lower judiciary. Simply because the court maintains records, this word should not be confused with that understanding. The court of records means the courts of which there are constitutional provisions which say that these are the courts which are considered as the courts of record. So the decisions given by these courts that operate as a court of records are as precedents. Then you must have heard of certain Latin words. Yesterday or day before yesterday, while dealing with the judgments, the writing of judgments, I quoted some of those Latin phrases. Stare decisis. Then abitur dicta. Then what are the other things?
Ratio decidendi.
Ratio decidendi. Ratio decidendi. Then
Curium.
what is it?
Idiom.
Idiom.
Parincurium.
Sub silentio. So what are these things? What is that we should know about those things? Let me take you into the discussion. First thing, what is the application of the precedent? Precedent has got certain applications. How a precedent is applied. How to use the precedent. Precedent can be applied, can be adopted, can be distinguished, and precedent can also be overruled. Overruling power is vested in the court which passed the earlier precedent or the appellate court to that court. So these three things the subordinate judiciary should know. Other three things: applying the principle, adopting the principle, and distinguishing the principle. What is applying the principle? What is adopting the principle? And how to distinguish the principle? Precedent. Principle means a precedent. Just now we know that a precedent is the law laid down by the High Court or Supreme Court, which are considered as the courts of record. If the same is applied, there won't be any problem. There is application of the precedent. Then adopting the precedent, when does it arise? Sometimes the precedent may have some persuasive value. Did you hear of such a word? Persuasive value. When do you say that it is of persuasive value? Suppose there is no judgment passed.
Having binding.
There is no judgment passed by the High Court under which these courts are functioning. But at the same time, a council cited the judgment of another High Court. Then it has got persuasive value, so that can be adopted. Then distinguishing the precedent, how? Precedents are not those of the statutes. A precedent cannot be taken as that of an act. Or of such a mathematical precision. A precedent has to be applied to the facts and circumstances of a given case. In case a precedent, on thoroughly seeing the facts of that case which is operating as precedent, it is found out that those facts are peculiar and are not suitable to the factual situation of a given case, then what should be done? Should be applied blindly? So that can be distinguished. It is a law laid down in a precedent, which is quota. If the same is not applicable to the factual situation of a given case, then that need not be applied, and there should be discussion, thereby distinguishing the two different situations. So a factual situation of a case which is operating a precedent should fit in with the factual situation of a case wherein the precedent is sought to be applied. Are you able to follow? Then overrule the precedent.
Yes, sir.
Who can overrule? The court which set the LA precedent or any appellate court to that court, or a larger bench. It all depends upon the situations arising from time to time. Then another method of overruling a precedent. What is it? A fresh legislation. Legislature can think of the effect of a precedent set up by the court. Then what can you do? You can pass a fresh legislation, thereby overcoming the difficulty being faced from that precedent. The state can make a fresh law and make some amendment to the existing law so as to overcome the effect of the precedent. Of course, that is also subject to judicial scrutiny. Thus, that amendment is challenged before the courts. Then the courts can give its interpretation, their interpretation. So, how to overcome the effect of a precedent? That should also be known. So, precedent application, how to apply the precedent, how it is adopted. The precedent is of persuasive value. Then, how to distinguish it. For your convenience, I am now presenting the PPT because you are already taught the subject. So, I need not go again into those details. I'm just refreshing you, recapitulating what is already taught to you. So distinguishing the precedent. Then overruling. Who can overrule? By the same court or a higher court on appeal. Or by way of a new legislation or some sort of development taking place. Determination of subsequent cases found the principles underpinning. Underpinning means foundation. The previous decision erroneous in law. Now let us deal with these Latin maxims. What are they? Stare decisis. What is it? Ratio decidendi abitur dicta. What is stare decisis?
To stand by decided matters, sir.
Can you repeat it?
To stand by decided matters, sir.
Stand by decided matters. That means a principle already settled and the judicial discipline operates, and to give regard to that settled principle, give regard to that settled principle, not to make any deviation from the same, because the principle is already settled. Stare decisis is a legal principle by which judges are obligated to respect the precedent established by prior decisions. The words originate from the phrasing of the principle in the Latin maxim stare decisis et non quota movere, which means to stand by decisions and not to disturb the undisturbed, not to disturb a particular thing which is already settled. In legal context, this means the court should abide by precedent, not to disturb the settled matters. Already, a precedent is created. This is decisis. Sometimes it is also pronounced as star. It's also pronounced as star. In some dictionaries, the pronunciation is given as star. In some dictionaries, the pronunciation is given as stare. So this is the fair diseases. Are you able to comprehend? The principle can be divided into two components. Number one, a decision made by superior court or by the same court in an earlier decision. That's binding precedent, and the court itself and all its inferior courts must follow. That means the court is also bound by that precedent. Suppose a single judge passed a judgment or passed an order wherein a particular principle of law is laid down, that operates as a precedent unless the same is disturbed by a larger bench. A court may overturn its own precedent, but should do so only if a strong reason exists to do so, and even in that case should be guided by principles from superior, lateral, and inferior courts. Then the decision or judgment of a judge may fall into two parts. What is ratio decidendi? The meaning is given here. Reason for decision. Ratio decidendi. What's your understanding about ratio decidendi? How do you understand it? In the previous
Come to the conclusions.
in the previous class, I dealt with the need of giving reasons for coming to the conclusions. What should a judgment reflect? Even the party who lost the legal battle should be able to understand for what reason he lost the case. That means it should be a speaking order. There should be reasons. There should be enunciation. There should be mentioning of the reasons. It should be the part and parcel of the judgment. That means there should be discussion there by giving the reasons for coming to a particular conclusion or giving a decision. That's called ratio decidendi. Ratio. What's the ratio for this judgment? What's the ratio behind it for deciding this case? That's called ratio decidendi. Then what is arbiter dicta? What is the difference between these two? What is an arbiter? Arbiter dicta is normally referred as arbiter. It's an arbiter, the judgment, they will say. It's not the ratio, but it's only arbiter. So what is the difference between these two?
So ratio decidendi has a binding value and arbiter dictum has only persuasive value.
Sometimes the arbiter dicta has also got some binding force. So the observations made by the high courts and supreme courts while making the ratio decidendi may also be taken as of such a binding force. Strictly speaking, what you said is correct. It's something said in the process of giving the ratio decidendi. But that arbiter should also be taken in due regard. Arbiter should also be taken in due regard. For example, I will give you an illustration. It is also judgment by the Supreme Court. While deciding an issue with regard to easementary rights, the Supreme Court made an observation in one of the judgments, that it is the common practice prevailing in the mindset of Indian rights to allow the neighbors to move on the lands when there is no crop standing on the lands. Be able to follow, because our people are so generous, therefore they won't raise an objection to others passing on the lands when the land is vacant. There is no standing crop on the land. There is an observation made that is about the conduct of the Indian rights, the farmers. But the same observation was also quoted in so many other judgments subsequently. Though it's an arbiter, that means it has nothing to do with the ratio decidendi. Incidentally, that comment is passed or the observation is made. But the arbiter also operates as something with some force. So we should be careful that even if arbiters given by the superior courts, that is High Court and the Supreme Court, they have also got some force in the application. But strictly speaking, arbiter is different from ratio decidendi. Let me explain it further. This is ratio decidendi. Ratio decidendi of a case is the principle of law on which a decision is based. How the decision is based. That is, the principle evolved, the principle emerged. And that is the core of the conclusions arrived in the judgment. This is the principle laid down here. And this is the fulcrum upon which the decision is based upon. So that's called ratio decidendi. When a judge delivers judgment in a case, he outlines the facts which he finds which have been proved on the basis of evidence. Then he applies the law to those facts and arrives to a decision for which he gives the giving reason for coming to the conclusions. So that's called ratio decidendi. So it has got binding force. In fact, this is the core of the precedent. Ratio decidendi is the core of the precedent. Then the other thing, obiter dictum. A judge may sometimes make a discussion on some aspects which are relevant and analogous to the particular subject matter on hand relating to the case are of general importance and given circumstances of a particular case, which may not lay down a specific legal proposition, but has some bearing to the given facts, or may go on to speculate about what his decision would or might have been if the facts of the case had been different. This is an obiter dictum. Of course, you need not be worried about this because there are certain judgments of the Supreme Court which will guide us. The Supreme Court says that what is stated in the precedent should be followed, but there need not be any logical discussion. Suppose you are unable to understand a particular obiter dictum laid down or that is applicable to that particular set of facts in the decision which is quoted as precedent. You can simply say that those observations may not be applicable to the present case on hand, and that that is a particular thing which cannot be equated with that of the binding force of the judgment. Suppose if you are able to distinguish those things, that means you need not enter on a logical discussion. So what the Supreme Court said is, if you are unable to understand a particular obiter, you need not go on making some logical discussion, thereby searching for such meanings. When a particular thing is not giving a particular sense of meaning or particular understanding, you need not go on making logical discussion, thereby thinking in a logical manner. Let us see those judgments.
Doubt, sir, in this obiter dictum.
Yes.
It is written in the last but fourth or fifth line that or may go on to speculate about what his decision would or might have been if the facts of the case had been different. No, sir?
Different.
Suppose if a Supreme Court judge makes such an observation as to what he would have done if the facts were different, can we follow that as, does it have binding force on us?
That's what I am saying. Suppose if there is a factual differentiation, those facts do not fit into the factual situation of the present case, you need not follow. You can distinguish
different facts suit our case, sir.
Different facts. If those facts do not suit the facts of the present case at hand, that can be distinguished. Even if a precedent is quoted on a principle of law and that is not applicable to the factual situation, you can make such a distinction. That liberty is always with us, provided we are able to make certain differentiation. Arbiter observations are also binding sometimes because those cannot be brushed aside, those cannot be taken out. But those are not applicable to the factual situation of a given case. We need not go on making logical observations as if those are binding on us. That means one need not make into such a logical inferences. How that could be? Let us see. I will be quoting some citations, then you will be better understanding. So that is the difference between arbiter and the binding force of the judgment. The binding part of judicial decision is the ratio decidendi. The difference between ratio decidendi and arbiter. An arbiter is not binding in latter case because it was not strictly relevant to the matter in issue in the original case. However, the however is important. An arbiter dictum may be of persuasive value as opposed to binding force, persuasive authority in latter cases. A difficulty arises in that although the judge will give reasons for his decision, he will not always say what the ratio decidendi is, and it is then up to a latter judge to elicit the ratio of the case. There may, however, be disagreement over what the ratio is and where, and there may be more than one ratio. Then, what is sub silentio? What is sub silentio? It is already explained here. When a particular point of law involved in a decision is not perceived by a court or was not present in its mind or is not consciously determined by the court, it doesn't form part of the ratio decidendi. Such a decision is regarded as having been rendered sub silentio. Such a decision doesn't constitute a precedent and is therefore not binding. So the lower court should be very, very careful because there is judgment of Justice P. A. Chowdhury. I will quote you shortly. He said that a particular point of law was not discussed at all in the precedent. Therefore, it's not a good precedent that need not be followed because there is judgment of the High Court. High Court went to an extent of saying that the earlier judgment quota was not a binding precedent that need not be followed because there was no reference to a particular point of law. But the lower court should be very, very careful and vigilant and diligent in making such observations. You cannot simply say that you need not follow a particular decision shown as a precedent and that a particular point of law was not discussed therein. If you are able to make such a differentiation and give reasons, you can do so. But you cannot simply ignore a precedent. That is always vulnerable. So one should be very, very cautious. Judicial discipline operates here. So when binding force ceases to operate, when the binding force of a decision, the precedents ceases to operate, when under these circumstances, when a subsequent statute, a law passed by the parliament, or a rule inconsistent with the decision is made, that means a subsequent judgment by a larger bench, or when the premise on which the ratio decidendi is based is taken away, when the decision is reversed or overruled. Overruled means who can overrule it? By a larger bench. Reversing, who can do it? By a larger bench or appellate court. Then when the historical consideration because of which the earlier decision was given changes or ceases to exist. So these are the grounds under which a binding force ceases to operate. Now let us see some important case law. To dispel the doubts, let me first question some of you as to how to get relief from the confusion arising in applying the precedent law.
So by seeing larger bench judgment.
The first thing is of the strength of the benches. That is one factor. Suppose if a judgment by single judge and a judgment by division bench, which are inconsistent with each other, which prevails? A larger bench. A larger bench. Then a judgment of two judges of equal strength where some inconsistency, then which is the other factor to be taken care of, which is more
Which are more nearer to our
nearer,
factors.
which is more nearer in point of time, time. So these things we know. Suppose if there is a conflict between the benches of equal strength, then
Close to our case first.
how to resolve it, or how to adapt this safe method? Because
So the later one prevails.
but later one prevails, that is one view. But there is some more suggestion given by the full bench of the Madras High Court. How to follow under those circumstances? Let us see.
It's our this.
It is what is Yashwant? What are you saying?
Discretion.
Not discussion, no, but seeing
Then it's our.
the factual situation of a case, situation of a case. That means what I already said earlier, where the facts of the previous judgment suit in with the facts of the present case on hand. Before that, let us deal with the safe methods. These are the safe methods. First thing is the larger bench prevails. Larger bench prevails. The conflict between decisions of the Supreme Court benches. Then, which prevails? The larger bench prevails. The decisions of the Supreme Court cited, but there is conflict among them. Then it has to be adopted. So here it is decided that the larger bench prevails. Rana Natwar Singh versus State of Madhya Pradesh. 3 judges of the MP High Court. AR 1990, Madhya Pradesh, page 129. 1980, MPLJ 729. Here, the Supreme Court judgment given in 1974 is quoted. Here, 1974 Supreme Court 1596. In case of any conflict between 2 Supreme Court decisions, it prevails, which is delivered by the larger bench. So this is one guidance. Therefore, the court has chosen to follow the decision of a larger bench. That means strength of the benches. Then latter decision prevails. This is the view given by the AP High Court while quoting the Supreme Court decisions. Okay, Rachamma versus Bhimal Bhai. Is Bhate, Justice is Bhate. Conflict decisions of Supreme Court benches of equal strength. Bench of equal strength. What is advice given by the High Court? The High Court advised to follow the latter decision. Advised to follow the latter decision. It is more near in point of time. Because equal strength, judgments pronounced by the benches of equal strength. So, which is a safe method to adopt? The advice given by the High Court is to follow the latter decision, which is more nearer in point of time. 1996 2 ALT 111, 1996 2 ALD 379. So here the judge observed, I think I would be bound by the latter decision. The strength of benches presiding over the two benches is same, and if apparently conflict exists in the two, the apparent conflict between those decisions, two decisions, cited. Then what is the safe method suggested is to follow the latter. But there is still some difficulty how to overcome it. The judgment of the Madras High Court, full bench, judgment of Justice S. Ramchandrayan. Application of precedents, when there is a conflict, certain guidelines given. Guidance is given by the full bench, paras 4 and 5. R. Ramasubbarayulu Reddyar versus Vengammal. This judgment is repeatedly quoted in almost all the lectures. The speakers quote this judgment because here the guidance is given. 1962 and 1962 Madras 450 S. Ramchandrayan. He was then the Chief Justice of Madras High Court. See friends, these observations. I want one of you read these observations for the benefit of all others.
The normal rule as to the precedents is that subordinate courts are bound, in the absence of any decision of the Supreme Court, follow the decision of the High Court to which they are subordinate.
Stop.
Here, however,
Just to stop here. That means the first thing is when there is no judgment of the Supreme Court and when the judgment of the High Court, which has to be followed, to follow the decision of the High Court because they're all subordinate to the High Court. That is clear here. Next, second thing, where, however, Swati, you may read further.
yes, sir. Where, however, there is a conflict between two decisions of the High Court, the rule to be adopted is as follows. The conflict is between the judgment of a single judge and a bench, or between a bench and a larger bench. Decision of the bench or the larger bench, as the case may be, will have to be followed.
It is also clear. That means when there is a conflict between two decisions of the High Court, the rule to be adopted is as follows. Where the conflict is between the judgment of a single judge and a bench, or between bench and a larger bench, the decision of the bench or the larger bench, as the case may be, will have to be. That means the strength of the bench, larger bench, that prevails. That is also easy. Then, but that is difficult. Real difficulty arises here. But and then you can continue.
But where the conflict is between two decisions, both pronounced by a bench consisting of the same number of judges, and the subordinate court, after a careful examination of the decision, came to the conclusion that both of them directly apply to the case before it, it will then be at liberty to follow that decision which seems to it more correct. Whether such decision be the later or the earlier one.
Earlier. So, what is to be done? To apply the decisions which is more correct. Can you say that this judgment is correct? Judgment is not correct? Because it's a full bench, the full bench is able to say. But you being a judge of subordinate court, can you say that the judgment is correct? That means you have to say that that is more of the present factual situation of a case. Instead of using the words correct or wrong, you will say that the judgment is more appropriate to the factual situation of the present case. Then it is further observed. To enable the subordinate court to do so,
the two apparently conflicting decisions must directly relate to and expressly decide the question that arises before the court. Otherwise, a subordinate court should follow that ruling which specifically deals with the point. Not be open to it, for example, follow the other decision which only impliedly or indirectly or by way of a mere observation gave expression to a contrary view.
stop here. So what is that you could understand, friends? Any of you, we speak about this of reading these observations. Very important. To enable the subordinate court to do so, that means you have to say that particular judgment is more appropriate. But the High Court suggested that you should say that particular judgment can be followed because it is correct. Correct means it is more applicable to the facts of the given case on hand. So to enable the subordinate courts to do so, the two apparently conflicting decisions must directly relate to and expressly decide the question that arises before the court. Otherwise, a subordinate court should follow that ruling which specifically deals with the point, and it will not be open to it, for example, to follow the other decision which only impliedly or indirectly or by way of mere observation gave expression to a contrary view. That means one judgment is directly applicable. One judgment suggests some application in an indirect way. That means it is applicable in a logical manner, in an indirect way, not directly applicable. Then what is safe method? Safe method is to apply that decision which is directly applicable instead of applying the decision which is indirectly applicable or impliedly applicable. So that is also one of the safe methods. Then further, it follows that the learned decisions therein are the admit the fact that the present case was not justified in refusing to follow the decision default and so on and so on. So for its preference, a decision which impliedly decided a point as against the one that directly did so is neither consistent with established rules relating to precedents nor conducive to orderly administration of justice. In conflict between two equal strength benches, the decision which applies directly overrides the other, which impliedly applies. That means there is no choice at all. I can follow I apply it and then I do not apply that. He cannot say so. But instead, he should give some reasoning as to why he applied a particular decision, which is directly applicable. The other thing is indirectly applicable. So which is directly applicable that can be followed. That is the suggestion given by the full bench here. To make things more vivid, more clear, more easy, I will take you to some metaphorical observations given in some of the judgments pronounced by Justice Ajit Pasait. He elaborately dealt with them. He quoted the observations from Justice Denning. Certain metaphors used by Justice Denning. Those things were quoted. Let me take to these observations. This is judgment of Justice Ajit Pasait, Supreme Court. Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited versus NR Vairamani. Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited versus NR Vairamani. This is a very famous judgment. If you read this judgment, all your doubts are dispelled. You may be entertaining some doubt as to how to apply a precedent, how to distinguish. Here, the method is suggested. Some metaphors are used. And there is also another judgment. I will also cite the same. That is also of Justice Ajit Pasaik. Two judges here, but other by this Ajit Pasaik. This is 2004-10 SRJ 136. How to interpret the precedents. The circumstantial flexibility should be considered. Here what is suggested is circumstantial flexibility. There should not be blind application. Simply because there is a decision, don't think that you can dispose of things by quoting it. And you need not make any further observation. Some people are under the impression that if there is a precedent quoted that can be applied, and there need not be a discussion. That's bad. It's commented here. Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited versus NR Vairmani. 2004. Another judgment 2005. There is report in 2006. Let me take you to the judgment also shortly. But let us see this judgment first. AI 2004 Supreme Court 4778. Which is equivalent to 2004-8 SCC page 579. Court should not place reliance on decisions without discussing as to how the factual situation fits in with the factual situation of the decision on which reliance is placed. See, friends, the court should not apply the precedents blindly. They cannot place reliance on the decisions without discussing as to how the factual situation fits in with the factual situation of the decision on which reliance is placed. Observation of courts are neither to be read as Euclid's theorems nor as provisions of the statute, and that too taken out of their context. Euclid's theorems. Who is Euclid? You know who is Euclid? Anyone of you? Euclid is an Egyptian mathematician, famous mathematician. He's a famous mathematician belonging to Egypt. So, observations of the courts are neither to be read as Euclid's theorems nor as provisions of the statute, and that too taken out of their context. They cannot be read out of context. These observations must be read in the context in which they appear to have been stated. Judgments of courts are not to be construed as statutes. Statutes, it's not, they are not to be construed as statutes. They are not to be taken as those of the acts. To interpret words, phrases, and provisions of a statute, that means to interpret as if it is a statute. Such an interpretation should not be done. To interpret words, phrases, and provisions of statute, it may become necessary for judges to embark into lengthy discussions, but the decision is meant to explain, not to define. Judges interpret statute. They do not interpret judgments. They interpret words of statutes. Their words are not to be interpreted as statutes. They interpret the words of statutes. Their words are not to be interpreted as statutes. Here, these observations are made in paragraph 9. The observations I quoted just now, they are made in para 9 of the judgment. Then, the learned judge quoted the observations of Lord Denning and Lord Morris first. He said, there is always peril in treating the words of a speech of judgment as though they are words of legislative enactment, and it is to be remembered that judicial utterances made in the setting of the facts of a particular case. Circumstantial flexibility, one additional or different fact may make a world of difference between conclusions in two cases. Disposal of cases by blindly placing reliance on a decision is not proper. Blind reliance should be avoided. Simply because the decision should not be blindly applied. So, circumstantial flexibility, what is further insisted is one additional or different fact may make a world of difference, a sea change of difference between those two judgments. The present case before you and the case where a precedent is operating. Lord Denning, in the matter of applying these precedents, have become locus classicus. So this is the classic observation of Lord Denning. Each case depends on its own facts, and a close similarity between one case and another is not enough, because even a single significant detail may alter the entire aspect in deciding such cases. One should avoid the temptation to decide cases by matching the color of one case against the color of another. To decide therefore on which side of the line a case falls, the broad resemblance to another case is not at all decisive. Decision should be followed only so far as it makes the path of justice. But you must cut the dead wood and trim off the side branches, else you will find you have lost the thickets and branches. My plea is to keep the path to justice clear of obstructions which will impede it. See, friends, metaphorical approach. This is called metaphorical approach. You have to do some pruning. What is meant by the word pruning? Prune is the verb. Prune means cutting the edges of plants. You must be observing it in the parks. They prune the plants in such a manner. So that work should be done here. How it applies, or else there is a danger of one being lost in the thickets and branches. There is a caution given by Lord Denning. The student should be followed only so far as it marks the path of justice. How precedent is helpful to us is just like a signboard. You want to travel to a particular place. How you are guided. Some boards here and there showing the way to reach that place, are giving you indication as to how far the place is from the place where you are. So these are all just guiding the factist on the path. The precedent should be followed only so far as it marks the path of justice, but you must cut the dead wood and trim off the side branches, else you will find you have lost in thickets and branches. My plea is to keep the path to justice clear of obstructions which could impede it. See, friends, what a beautiful observation given by Lord Denning that is quoted here. Then the same judge of Supreme Court made another observation, similar observations in the later judgment pronounced in year 2005, Union of India versus Union Major Bahadur Singh. This is also a milestone judgment with regard to the application of precedents. How to apply precedent? It's stated here, 2006-1 APLJ 27, lies to cases, lies to notes on recent cases, DNSCC and Supreme Court cases. APLJ 27. Sirisha, you are asking something? 6-1 APLJ 20, DNSCC. Similar observations are made here also. The same quotations from Justice Denning, because the judgment of the same judge. Once again, read the observation. Lord Denning's observation. Better keep the mic mute. Some of them. Always keep the mics in mute condition. Circumstantial flexibility, one additional different fact may make a world of difference. Those are the observations. Denning's metaphorical observations are also quoted here. So after seeing these observations, are not assured of the safe method, how to follow a precedent. The precedent should not be followed blindly. First thing is a precedent of giving a clear indication of law that will be followed. And if the facts of that case are also similar to the fact of the present case before you, that can be safely relied upon. If the principle of law alone is stated therein, and it is of the bench of larger strength, that can also be safely relied upon. Or if there is a conflict between the two judgments of the single judges, which is more nearer in point of time, and which is more applicable to the facts of the present case, that can be relied upon. But what's more important is the discussion while applying the precedent. So what's being done by most of the courts nowadays is they're simply quoting the decisions and saying that those are not applicable. They're not distinguishing. They're not making any discussion with regard to those decisions. That's bad. That's comment. Whenever a decision is quoted or a precedent is quoted, you must be able to apply the same to the facts of the present case on hand. So without the application, you cannot simply say that it's a decision and therefore it's applied. The precedent value, this is important. What is the value of a precedent? When it gives its value. Doda House versus SK Mayangini, judgment of Supreme Court, two judges, this is BP Singh and SP Sinha. Here they caution that one should not enter upon the logical discussion. That's not totally uncalled for. We did not enter upon logic. It's well settled that a decision is an authority, what it decides, and not what can logically be deduced therefrom, what is logically deducible from it. Suppose something is deducible, you can infer certain things which suggest to your mind. You may go on building something basing upon the supposition, some logical thinking. That's not called for. That's not warranted. There's a caution given here. On 6-1 ALD, Supreme Court 138. On 6-1 SCJ 218. On 6-9 SCC 41. 2006 AR 2006 Supreme Court page 730. Madras Law Journal also reported this judgment. 2006-1 Madras Law Journal page 36. AR more suitable in SCC. 2006 AR 2006 Supreme Court page 730. It is settled that a decision is an authority, what it decides, not what can logically be deduced therefrom. Another judgment of the Supreme Court. Two more judgments per quarter. That means one need not go for logical discussion. If that is applicable to the facts of the present case on hand, that can be made. the discussion can be made. But something deducible in indirect manner that need not be given room for. This is the caution given by the Supreme Court. So these two judgments always bear it in mind. Let's keep them in mind. Bharat Petroleum case and also Union of India versus Major Bahadur Singh's case, where Justice Ajit Prasad quoted the metaphors used by Lord Denning in the previous judgments, and those judgments we saw as a guiding force for us. And whenever you find some difficulty in applying the precedent, then go to the full bench judgment of Madras High Court. It also guides you as to how to apply the precedent. So these are all the judgments, friends. Keep them in mind and read them again and again. Then you will be relieved of all the doubts with regard to the precedents. Thank you very much. Better prepare for charges. I may be putting some interaction with you. I may ask somebody by name at random with the names available with me, and by giving some problem, I will be asking each one of you, if possible, to frame a charge. You have to interact. Each one of you should interact with me. I will go calling by names and then asking to answer. And I will also be questioning you about the trial procedures, because we have to enter upon the civil cases. The civil law should be taken care immediately. So Civil Procedure Code and Specific Relief Act and all those things will be elaborately dealt by us. And before that, I should be assured that you are well versed in topics which were already taught to you. So I want to know your knowledge about the procedural aspects. I'm questioning some of you at random about the procedural aspects and also asking them to frame the charges, which I used to do with almost all the batches. So friends, prepare for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.